Good day and welcome to the Best Way to Influence Potential Donors, Creating Fact-Filled Fact Sheets webinar. Today's webinar is being recorded. At this time, I would like to turn the conference over to Kristin Milano. Please go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you very much, and welcome everyone to our webinar on creating fact sheets. My name is Kristin Milano, and I am the Vice President of Social Impact at Lever for Change, which is a new affiliate of the affiliate organization of the MacArthur Foundation. We've been working with the MacArthur Foundation to run and manage the 100 Change competition, and many of us that are involved in Lever for Change were highly involved in the first round of 100 Change as well. We are excited to have everyone on the line and hope you had a wonderful holiday season and a happy new year. Before we get started, I just want to announce a bit of housekeeping. First, to let everybody know that this webinar will be recorded, and a link to the webinar as well as relevant materials and a transcript will be sent to attendees in the next several days, most likely maybe early next week. It all depends on when we get everything together. Closed captioning is available. If you look to the dialog panel on the left of your screen, you will see that there is a link for closed captioning. If you would like to have access, please click on that link and follow the instructions that pop up. If you have any questions during the webinar, please feel free to enter them into the chat box. We will be following those questions, and after the presentation is completed, we will make sure to raise as many questions as we can possibly get through in the time that we have today. And then finally, at the end of this webinar, we would love to get your feedback. So a very short survey will pop up, a link will pop up at the end of the webinar, and we encourage you to please take that survey and give us feedback so we can continue to improve on webinars in the future. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's get started. So why are we doing this webinar? I want to start off with some of the learnings that we had from the first round of 100 and Change that really showed us that we had an opportunity to help promote all top performing organizations using the momentum of the 100 and Change competition. We also learned that a lot of donors were very interested in many of the top performing projects that were not named as finalists by the MacArthur Foundation. And so over the course of the last several years, sometimes known to the organizations, sometimes organizations didn't know that we were doing this, but we have provided many different types of donors and philanthropists with lists of projects that we received from our initial 100 and Change competition. We compiled lists that were in their strategic areas of interest or areas that they might be interested in focusing on the future, gave them the names of the organizations and the descriptions of the projects that they were doing, and in some cases that has actually led to funding. So through both our ability to share this information with lots of various donors and philanthropists of all different stripes, and through the work of savvy applicants who use the momentum and the prestige of the 100 and Change competition in their own fundraising purposes, we have collectively leveraged more than $419 million additional dollars on top of MacArthur's investment for participants of the inaugural 100 and Change competition. So with this in mind, we want to continue that momentum in this new competition and the new second round of 100 and Change, and to continue to build on that momentum. But in order to do this more effectively, we are asking for everyone's help in this process. So I want to talk now briefly about Lever for Change, which is tasked with, and one of our mission goals is to actually help organizations it's to help organizations, but also to help unlock philanthropic capital and accelerate social change around the world's biggest social challenges. And so how we do this is that we are actually helping philanthropists source vetted, high-impact opportunities and connect nonprofits and problem solvers to significant amounts of philanthropic capital. So we essentially work with high net worth individuals, ultra high net worth individuals, family foundations, and other types of institutional donors to manage customized competitions for them. So if they are interested, such as MacArthur and 100 and Change, to run a competition, we will help manage that competition to unlock this capital. The second way that we are doing this is that we are also matching philanthropists who may not want to run a competition, because we recognize Competitions are time-consuming, and they're not necessarily the most efficient way to actually unlock capital. We have many philanthropists who actually don't want to run a competition, but they're looking for good ideas, and they're looking for vetted proposals and vetted projects where they can put their funds and support social change. And so we are helping to create that matchmaking through a new initiative that we're launching called the Bold Solutions Network, which will go live in February 2020. And this is the rationale for asking all of you to create and prepare these fact sheets for us. So I want to talk a little bit more about the Bold Solutions Network. So this network is going to be an online searchable database, and we will be profiling all of the top applicants from every Lever for Change competition that we run. So 100 and Change, the Chicago Prize, Economic Opportunity, and we have about 6 or 7 additional competitions that we'll be launching in the next year. So we encourage all of you to go to the Lever for Change website and sign up for announcements so that you know when competitions are launching in case any of them match your particular fields of expertise. So this Bold Solutions Network will be a searchable database. It will have select elements of your original proposal, so the title, summary, solution, etc., as well as a link to your video that you provided in your application. And it will have the 2-page fact sheet that we're asking you to create for us today in order for us to use for marketing, so that we can put this fact sheet in front of donors who might have an interest and say to us, hey, what did you receive that was a top proposal for climate change? And we can compile all that together. We can put your fact sheets together and send that to donors in a nice booklet for them to look through in the hopes of, again, getting your projects in front of as many eyes as possible with for people who are looking to make those types of investments. The Bold Solutions Network will also be more than just a searchable database. It will also provide members of the network with ongoing learning opportunities and provide limited technical support opportunities beyond the competition process. So even outside of the competition, we have modest resources to provide limited technical support and opportunities to those members of the Bold Solutions Network. We will be providing additional information about the Bold Solutions Network and how that will be moving forward after we announce the top 100 for MacArthur's 100 and Change competition. So you all will stay tuned, and we'll be following up with instructions there. So while a competition, part of the reason we're doing this is that we recognize that while a competition may have a single award recipient, we surface so many exciting, excellent ideas by really fantastic teams that are really worth supporting. And we are committed to getting these projects in front of as many philanthropists as possible and unlocking those resources. So that is our mission. That's what we're trying to do. And we hope that you will be excited about this opportunity and will help provide us with the information that we need to get this information in front of donors. I know that many of you probably have a lot of questions about the 100 and Change technical review process, because we let you know right before the holidays that you were moving into the technical review process and that you asked you to join this call. So I want to preempt some questions that you all might have on this. Given that this is our first communication with you all since you have been moved to the technical review stage. So some basic facts is that inclusion in the Bold Solutions Network is contingent on the outcome of the technical review process, which is currently in progress. The technical reviews are focused mostly on identifying strengths and weaknesses in each of your proposals and are conducted by experts within your field. There is no set number or percentage of applications that will automatically make it through this process. Each application is going to be individually evaluated on its own merits. Our presumption at this point is that applications that have made it to the technical review process will make it through the technical review phase. However, we do reserve the right to not advance applications to the top 100 or to exclude applications from the Bold Solutions Network. So we just want to make that clear. Our presumption and assumption is that all of you will make it through this part of this process, but we're reserving the right to actually not advance some applications. The technical reviewers will remain anonymous, so you won't know who they are, but you will receive anonymized feedback. We don't currently have a timeline for when that will be, given that we are we're deep in the midst of trying to collect all of this information, but in February we will let you know when you can expect to receive that technical review feedback. And then the next steps after this is that the MacArthur board will be deliberating on who they will name as finalists at their upcoming board meeting in the spring. And so after that, we will be in touch with those teams to let you know if you have made it onto the 100 and change finalist list, or if you will just remain in the top 100 list. Okay, so with that out of the way, I would like to turn to the purpose of this webinar, which is to talk with you about how to create fact sheets that can be influential and interesting and hopefully catalytic for unlocking resources. So we have invited several guest speakers to talk with us and to share their expertise around how to create these fact sheets. First of all, we have Lynn McDermott, who is a Senior Advisor, Communications and Marketing Expert that works for Catholic Relief Services. We also have Callie Johnston joining us. She is the Director of Principal Gifts at the University of Chicago's Medicine and Biological Sciences. And then we have Karen Turney, who is the Director of Development for the Nest 360 project. Now, Lynn and Karen both worked on teams that made it to the finals for 100 and Change, so they have a lot of experience in both the 100 and Change process as well as working with MacArthur in 100 and Change and Lever for Change to create 2-pagers for us for marketing purposes. And Callie Johnston has been instrumental in helping us think through what type of information we want to include in the Bold Solution Network and what types of information is key in these fact sheets to encourage donors and to entice donors in supporting projects and organizations at a high level. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the webinar now over to our esteemed guest who will take it from here. So Callie, why don't you kick us off?
Will do. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to go to my slide. So I, just further introduction, I work as a principal gift fundraiser at the University of Chicago. And as the child of 2 advertising executives, I am always thinking about how we can sell our product. And we are so lucky in our industry that we are selling the impact of our organizations. So when I was talking with Kristin and her team at MacArthur and learning about this Lever for Change process, I was thrilled to hear about this piece, this 2-pager piece. In our work at the University of Chicago, the 2-pager or the fact sheet, whatever you want to call it, is absolutely instrumental to our work, both in how we use it as a tool, and we will talk a little bit more about that. Lynn and Karen will talk more, but really about getting your ideas synthesized and down on paper. So I just wanted to, I have not participated in the Lever for Change process, as Kristin said, but I am just such a fan of this piece of the process and wanted to just talk for a minute about how you can think about it in order to get the most mileage out of this expenditure of your resources. I know it takes time to do, and it will certainly see the light of day with through the Lever for Change process and the donors who express interest in your type of work, but wanted to think with you all too about how you can use it in your own shop. And I think thinking about that in 2 categories. One is internally, so how your team can get the ideas on paper and really down into elevator pitch language, really crisp around the impact you want to have, how you'll get there, what the timeline is. We do this a lot at UChicago, and you know what, they're not pretty. Usually they're very kind of academic white paper in how they're organized. Karen and Lynn will talk a lot more about how to make them beautiful and eye-catching. But I just can't emphasize enough how important it is to get the right stakeholders or experts from your organization in a room together to put this information on a page. And then externally, in my work with institutional transformative donors, be thinking as you create this document for the Lever for Change process and how your fundraisers or executive directors or team members at your organization can use this. Whether you send it to existing donors with handwritten notes to explain a new initiative, whether you take it as a leave behind for meetings or even send it in advance to meetings you have with prospective donors. It's a great way to get some additional mileage out of this tool that you're creating for this process. So I will turn it over to Karen and Lynn, who will now talk you through how to create the perfect two-pager. But just before I do that, think about your favorite advertisement you've ever seen. Mine is the Coca-Cola bears, the polar bears you see at Christmas. And think how that makes you feel. And think about your two-pager in terms of making people feel that about your organization. So turning it over to Lynn and Karen.
All right. Thank you, Callie. Karen and I are looking forward to talking to you about our experience creating fact sheets for 100 and change, and also our experience using them in other ways. We have a few slides that will lead us through some key.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing momentary interruption in our conference. Please continue to hold. Please go ahead.
Hi everyone, this is Karen from Nest 360 and Rice 360. Hopefully Lynn will be able to join us again. I've gone ahead and moved on to the next slide. One way that Lynn and I think about the two-pager or a fact sheet, something that we can all relate to, is to sort of think about it like a resume. It's not supposed to say everything about your project and can't possibly in 2 pages, just like a resume wouldn't tell an employer every single thing about you. So the way we think about it is a way to entice your audience so they want to learn more, just like an employer would want to give you an interview when they're looking over your resume. And so you'll see here some of the reasons we've listed to hand out fact sheets Callie addressed earlier, and we wholeheartedly agree with that.
Okay, and so thanks, Karen. If you keep driving, I will cover some of Lynn's comments as she is having connectivity issues. So this is Callie Johnston. What you're going to want to do is define your purpose and audience. Why are you doing this, and who is it for in terms of the work that your organization does? And what do you want? And then what do you want your audience to know or feel about your work? I would say that before you dive into writing your fact sheet, take a step back and invest a little time in pulling out the ideas and perspectives of the technical team, the communications team, the fundraising team, the leadership team, the advocacy team, everyone who's invested in this project at different levels of your organization. If you can get folks in the same room, even better, but make sure you're consulting people, everyone who touches on this project. Everyone has a unique point of view, and sometimes you don't realize how far apart these teams are from their different perspectives until you start to write the fact sheet, and you'll learn a lot through the process. So if Karen, do you mind advancing the slide? I would say that, you got it? Mm-hmm. There we go. This process, while it's sometimes frustrating and time consuming to get people in the room to really bring your ideas down to the most concise nuggets, it's a giant step forward in terms of getting the whole team aligned. So the big questions you're going to want to cover and get everyone on the same page around are, what is it that you're really going to do and who is doing it? We all know this is especially tricky when you're doing consortium projects, so getting alignment there. What is it that you and your organization want to be known for? This speaks to your strengths and the unique nature of your project, what you can do that no other organization can do. What is your secret sauce? Thirdly, where are you spending the budget? This is where the rubber hits the road. The project has a big picture, but when you get down to it, what are you promising to deliver and how can you be held accountable to those things? And then finally, how will you convince your audience or donor that you can be trusted to spend their money wisely and deliver results? I'll just say I used to work for a nonprofit watchdog organization, and they looked at a number of ways that organizations spent the money and made sure that everyone was above board. How can you, from your unique organization, deliver? Karen, back to you.
Great, thank you. So those are some really big picture questions, and we've jotted down here some other questions that you might want to think about when you're preparing the one-pager. I think I'm just going to focus on a couple of these, because you have them in front of you. Don't forget that, and this is something that I learned personally. You may have been living and breathing this initiative or your work for months or years, and Lever for Change and 100 and Change is this amazing opportunity. But don't forget when you're doing this this two-pager that your audience knows anything about what your project is. So what is the story that you want to tell? It's really about remembering your audience. Another thing I think has been really useful and was in our experience is using data to help tell the story. Again, it's about your audience, and people read and see things differently. So what data could be easily digestible for a two-pager and help convey your story? For me, I'm very visual, so one thing that was really important to me when we did our two-pager was having compelling photos that will entice someone to pick it up. They'll see it and they'll want to read more. They'll want to know what is this about. Another useful tool is infographics. My caution there is to make sure that the infographic isn't just a repeat of words on the page, but that it's really a complement, that it will help maybe drill down or convey complex information. And again, finally, it's about thinking about your audience and really balancing the technical and emotional. That's something that Lynn and I talked about quite a bit, because your audience is not all one person. So think through those things as you prepare your one-pager. Here's some tips for using good design. You will have a two-pager about writing two-pagers from us after this call. And there are some key do's and don'ts that we want to share with you that we learned in our process. As I mentioned, don't try to include it all. Use infographics, use photos. You can't possibly, condense many pages of proposal into 2 pages, so don't try to include it all. Remember not to use a bunch of technical jargon or acronyms that you haven't defined. We find that a lot in our work, so we're really, again, focused on the audience and avoid those things. I can say this, trust your communications professionals. I am a development professional, but I worked with my communications professionals, and I think we came up with a really successful 2-pager. So I would say work together as a team and don't ignore your communications professionals. If you have a graphic designer on staff or a resource, I would also recommend using them as well.
And I'll jump in with some of the do's, some of the best practices from our experience,
you
my
can
experience.
Also,
oh, go ahead.
This is Lynn. I'm back if you want
Oh,
me
you're
to.
back. Lynn, go for it.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for the interruption. So just jumping in where Karen left off, under some do's, we do recommend that you empower one leader to be ultimately in charge of making the final call on content. What we've often found is that if we try to make decisions about content by consensus, we find that that really doesn't work very well.
Apologies, we just lost Lynn again.
You don't need to mute us. We'll just have Callie continue. Please just.
I'll continue. Yep.
Yep.
Are we back on?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, great. So I'll continue. I think so as Lynn was saying, empower one leader to be in charge of making the final call. We would also recommend that you have a distribution plan for your final product. So as you're getting consensus from your team, take an extra step to think with your fundraisers about how they would use this. Is this going to be useful for them in meetings or meeting preparation with potential donors? How can you think about using this with your board or other stakeholders so that when you have a final product, it doesn't just live on a shelf? If you take just that extra little bit of time in the planning process to make sure that it is in fact a useful tool for various members of your team, then it will have a life beyond this process. And my other suggestion would be to review the content and make changes on an ongoing basis. So this isn't a static document that you finish it, it's done, and that's it. We've had really good experience creating these things in a fairly modular way so that as you have new wins in your organization or new data, that you can plug those in and have a fresh, ready document. To that point, I would offer that it's helpful not to go to great expense to print a bunch of these or do anything to professionalize it in an upfront way, because you will be using this and changing it as you go, making it an organic tool that gives it a little bit more life. And then finally, always a call to action. So include an email address or a website so they can learn more, or a very easy way for them to get their hands dirty and join you in your work. Yes. Karen, do you want to?
Yes. Yeah, hopefully Lynn can join us again. But we also wanted to share a little bit about what this two-pager or fact sheet experience meant for us in the 100 and change process and beyond. I think for us at Nest 360, there were a lot of internal and external benefits. Literally the process of coming up with this two-pager was itself a great experience. We have a very complicated or complex initiative, and it really helped us condense our messaging, get a tighter message, and really get on the same page internally about how we talk about our initiative. And to Callie's point, our two-pager has changed. So it is a dynamic document as we continue to talk to people. Also, it's a great resource for external constituents like donors and prospective donors, as we've talked about, but also internally. I have a lot of other colleagues in development throughout our, the institutions involved in our initiative, and so it's a really great tool for them to use and also for them to learn. They may not be as familiar with Nest 360 as I am, so it's when they're taking these two-pagers to meetings, it's also a good way for them to sort of remind themselves what the key points are. So I think that's been useful. And I do want to let you know that this tool has been successfully used. We have raised additional funds and from individual donors partly using this document. So we've really been able to get in front of people and secure funding from it. So I highly recommend it, and it as also a best practice, but also as a successful tool as you try to reach your goals.
Yep. We'll just end by saying thank you all for your. I'll go ahead, Kristin.
Oh, I was gonna say we have a couple of questions. So before that, I think I'm gonna ask you guys to chime in on a couple of questions that have come in around the two-pagers. So the first one is whether or not you suggest different fact sheets for different audiences.
That's a great question. This is Callie. I can start. So in our work at the University of Chicago, we start with, we do different versions for different audiences. And that's where I was alluding a little bit to a modular design. Some of our fact sheets would get into numbers, what a gift at certain levels would allow us to do. That might be useful for an individual donor audience if you're going into a meeting. It might not be relevant if you're doing internal communications or otherwise just generally educating folks to the mission of your work. So what we try to do, and I'm interested to hear Karen's process if she does something differently, is we create kind of a master two-pager, if you will, with all of the different information we would hope to include to all of our different audiences. And then you can kind of pick and choose what you use for certain audiences. I don't know if that's your experience, Karen, but that has been best for us.
I totally agree. We have sort of an all-audience type version, but I think that Callie's point about price points is spot on. MacArthur Foundation asked us to create a two-pager that would show impact at $5 to $10 million. I obviously wouldn't use that with an annual fund level donor who still wanted to make an impact with this initiative. So really, if you are using price points, obviously knowing who your audience is and an idea of what they're capable of so they can still feel they have an impact. In our case, with a complex project, if I know the donor has a particular interest in one of the countries that we are implementing in, I might sort of tailor the one-pager a little bit to that. So I would say, yes, I think you could tailor it, but also making sure that you have consistency around sort of the main nuts and bolts of your initiative are still there.
I agree completely. Can I add one more thing? Yep. So I think that even in work with individual donors, and even if you know someone you're speaking with has the ability to make a really significant investment, maybe you don't start with numbers. I know that a lot of the folks who are talking to Lever for Change are already of the mind that they want to make a big investment and are thinking at scale. Maybe your individual donors will ultimately end up making a large gift, but wouldn't want to see big numbers out of the gate. So I think in terms of thinking about your audience, you also want to think about where you are in your relationship with your donors and whether they're ready to think with you about being bold and big, or whether they simply need an introduction to the amazing work, and then your conversations can follow from there.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And I think that dovetails nicely into this next question, which is around defining the audience for the two-pagers that Lever for Change is requesting. And so I want to introduce everybody to Dana Rice, who is the Vice President of Philanthropy here at Lever for Change, and who is the person who is most familiar with and working with these donors and getting your work in front of these donors to answer these questions around the audience. So we have a couple of questions around whether or not this is are these largely individuals, or are they family foundations, from what geographic locations are they primarily from, and are they, if we can provide some broad insights into the donor profiles that will likely be using the Bold Solutions Network. So I'm going to turn it over to Dana to answer those questions.
Thanks, Kristin. So in terms of the answer to the first question, are these largely individuals and family foundations? The answer is yes. That is primarily the type of potential donor that has contacted us for a curated list of top proposals from the first round of 100 and change. That said, however, we've also provided top proposals and information on them to wealth and philanthropic advisors who are looking for content, if you will, to go along with the advice that they're providing to their clients. Those clients could be the ultra-high net worth individuals and family foundations, but may also be institutional funders of one type or the other, especially ones that may have made large place-based commitments and are now looking for rigorously evaluated and top-rated organizations that fit their particular criteria. So from what geographic locations do they generally come from? Right now, it is largely from the U.S., although we have responded and are still communicating with a number of foundations, family foundations, and individuals in Asia, especially Southeast Asia, as well as in a couple of countries in South America. We are, as part of this next round of 100 and change that you all are involved with, more proactively identifying donors around the world who are interested in making big bets in particular fields, and will be more proactive than we were in the first round to connect those donors with top-rated proposals that you all submit. So 3, are there some broad strokes, insights into the donor profile, generally used database? So some of that I've answered, but I can also tell you that some donors that we are in communication with are using the Bold Solutions Network to as a landscape when they enter new areas of funding, just to see, okay, who's doing what in this new field. I think also many of them, however, are deeply invested in their, their topics or in their specific geography, and are just looking for, top-rated proposals that are already been rigorously evaluated. So that's
great. Thank you, Dana. I appreciate that. I'm gonna show a slide now on kind of we're getting a lot of questions on what we want to see, what's going to be expected, et cetera. So I'm just going to move to that slide so I can answer a bunch of questions, hopefully at once, around what we anticipate needing. If I can move to it. So we'll be sending out an email that is going to give you all the instructions that you need in terms of what we are looking for and the time frame and when we need all the information, et cetera. This is a snapshot of what we will be asking for. So we will be asking for a 2-page maximum, not 5 pages, not 4 pages, not 2 pages with 3 sentences on a 3rd page. We want a 2-page maximum, 2-pager PDF from each of the teams by February 3rd. I forgot to emphasize this earlier. I do want to emphasize this is not part of the judging process. This is not part of the competition process. If you choose to not send us a 2-pager, that is your choice, but then you will not be included in the Bold Solutions Network. So this is an optional thing for you to do, to be included in the Bold Solutions Network. If you decide we're not interested, you don't have to provide it. This is not going to inform the MacArthur Board's decision in any way, shape, or form. So please keep that in mind. The fact sheet should include what you would do with $5 and or $10 million increments. So this goes back to, I think, the comments that Callie and Karen and Lynn were making before. You do want to make this somewhat modular because you may want to use the bulk of what you put together for an actual fact sheet that you can use with anyone and be able to swap out what you would do with $5 or $10 million for a lower amount. What we're asking for is $5 or $10 million because the donors that we are talking to and in regular contact with, that's the level of giving that we are pushing them to commit to. So that's why we're asking for that level of funding. We're also going to ask you to, if you have these things, to provide us with 3 high-resolution images that we can use, along with photo credits if applicable. These are photos that you have the rights to use, and that they do not contain pictures of children unless you have parental consent to use those photos publicly. The purpose of this is that we want to start building some imagery that we can use so that when we're putting together materials and collateral, we have some images, additional images that we are able to use from your project. That's optional if you don't have 3 high-res images. You don't need to stress about that. But if you do and you would like to include those, that would be useful. It would help us with social and things like that as we're promoting your work in different ways. We'll also be asking you for an updated point of contact for the project, as well as any updated project or website URLs that you might want us to use. So those are some things that we will be asking for. We'll send you additional information and follow up to this webinar in the next week to let you know all the specifics and additional nitty-gritty details that we probably don't want to get into today. There was a question that we have a bunch of questions that I want to make sure that we get to. So I'm going to go back to these. One of the questions is, because this is a live document, how will this work if there is if the 2-pager is specific for the 100 and change proposal, which probably wouldn't change? So this is also the flip side to another question that I saw earlier, which is how frequently will we be able to update our 2-pager on the Bold Solutions Network? So, what we're anticipating right now is that we would do once yearly updates to the 2-pagers, where we would request people to send us that information. That's what we're anticipating now. We have not made that as a final decision, but we will definitely communicate with you about how to update the 2-pagers, when we will be taking updates to the 2-pagers, etc. In terms of keeping a live document and kind of refreshing the work, our expectation is that projects tend to change and shift, and there may be new opportunities that you want to highlight. There might be new exciting things that have happened around your project. So even if the project itself maybe remains quite steady, there would still be elements of it that we would expect might change over the course of a year in which you might want to update it. So that's really up to you and your team in terms of how you would like to update your how frequently you want to update it for the uses for your own fundraising. With us, it'll likely be once a year that we'll ask you to update that information. Okay. I'm trying to look through what some of these questions are that I may not have answered yet. So I'm going to throw this question to Callie and or Karen. Do you have any advice on how to do a 2-pager for a consortium, i.e. more than one organization that is involved in a particular project or proposal?
Karen, you want to take this one?
When the project has multiple institutions involved, I assume? That's what that means? Well, that's what we did. And we all came together with one mission and one initiative. So we wrote it from that voice, but we had sort of like a text block that highlighted all the institutions that were leading this initiative so that we could show that we have all the right experts participating and that we have the geographic diversity to execute the project. So we simply showed that, but we wrote as one sort of united voice. Does that help, I hope?
Yes, I think that's good. Thank you. We have another question here around, is there a template for a 2-pager that we must or should follow? So there is no template that we are giving you. We want this to be a tool for you. We want it to be useful for you and your team. We want it to represent what your project is, and we didn't want to put parameters on what that should look like or how it should be created or constructed. So Lynn and Karen and Callie all kind of created this fact sheet that we will be sending out along with all the other materials that gives some tips and tricks to think about in terms of creating your fact sheet. So we will be sending that, but that again, it's just a tool for you to use. There is no set template that you must use for this. I do want to state, though, that the two-pager must be for the project that you submitted to 100 and change. It can't be generally for your organization. It can't be a different project that you're doing. It has to be for the 100 and change project that you submitted to us for this particular competition. I'm going to ask Karen and or Callie or Lynn, if she's been able to rejoin us, whether or not there is an open source software that you might recommend using to create infographics or designs.
This is Karen. I'm not aware of any. If Lynn were able to join us, she would probably know the answer to that, unfortunately.
Oh.
And
we can actually was able to get back on.
Oh, Lynn was able to get back on?
This is Lynn. I was able to get back on. Good. Yeah. Hopefully it won't hang up now that I am trying to talk. So I do have a graphic designer, and she uses certain programs, and I know that Adobe is a good one. But also if you're a Mac user, there's a program called Pages, and it comes with some templates, and you can also purchase other ones on the App Store. So there are some programs out there that really do help with some sort of pre-laid out programs that will help you with design.
Great, thank you. There is a couple of questions here around technical stuff. So one question is, how many applicants have been selected for the Bold Solutions Network? So the initial Bold Solutions Network will be launching with the top 100 applications from MacArthur, but this is going to be a growing network of projects. So while it's launching with the top 100 of MacArthur, it will also shortly then include applicants from other competitions that we're running, such as the Chicago Prize competition that's based here in Chicago, the Economic Opportunity competition that is a national competition that is currently open to applicants, and then the other competitions that we will be running. So while we're launching with 100, there will be a select set of applications from every competition that will be continuously being added to the Bold Solution Network. It will, for these other competitions, it is unlikely to be a high number like 100. It will be a much smaller cohort of individuals or projects that get added to the Bold Solutions Network from each of those competitions. We have a question around whether or not the URLs in the PDF will be clickable. And so as long as you make sure that they are clickable on your side, when you give us the PDF, they will remain active links within the Bold Solutions Network. And it will be downloadable for people as well. Thank you. Let's see. I'm sorry, I'm trying to both moderate and read the question. So here's a question for Callie and Karen and Lynn. How would you differentiate between a fact sheet and a concept brief?
I'll jump in on this one. I would actually start with a concept brief. So put your ideas on paper. Think about, I think about what our president at the University of Chicago does. As an academic, he's thinking very much about kind of the administrative and why we're doing what we're doing, what our secret sauce is, why now, and it's more academic, I would say. It's putting all of your ideas on paper. From that, I would synthesize into what are the key points. How do you turn something that might be more in narrative text into something that looks a little bit more like what's on the screen, a little more eye-catching, pulling out the key metrics, deliverables, things that are unique about your organization into more digestible, eye-pleasing, I would say, pieces. But I think they're both really important, and I think one informs the other. I don't know if Lynn and Karen have different experiences, but I would suggest you start with a concept paper and then turn that into a fact sheet.
Right.
Yeah, I think for us, we see fact sheets really as being, again, a little bit like a resume, where we try to make it something that's very attractive with some really important points that jump out to an audience. But we don't really see the fact sheet as being able to answer every question.
Oh, no. But, well, Sorry, Lynn, we're going to have to move. I'm sorry that Lynn keeps cutting in and out. We had a feeling this was going to be, she didn't, it was an unexpected trip that she had to take, so we apologize for her being interrupted. There's several questions here that I can answer around around the two-pager. So there are some questions here about clarification around the video. So I want to clarify, your two-pager does not need to include the video. I'm going to show on the screen right now, here is a sample of what the Bold Solutions Network page will look like for your application. We are pulling all of this information from the application that you already have provided us. So this information does not get updated. We don't need to have a new video. The video that we are using is the one pulled from your application. We do not want a new video. We don't want updated content. This is what you submitted in your application. The reason why is because this is what has been evaluated. It's been evaluated by your peers. It's been evaluated by the WISE-HEAD panel. It's been evaluated by technical reviewers. So when we go out and talk to donors, we can say, this is the process by which this project was reviewed. Here's what people say are their strengths. Here's what people say are things that they might need to consider if they're going to expand this work or continue this work, etc. So we are not looking for a new proposal. We're not looking for new content. We are pulling this information from your existing application. That's why the two-pager needs to mirror what you submitted. And so, you know, we're not looking at, one person here has asked whether or not the video could be updated. We do not want an updated video. We want the video that you submitted with the application, so you should make sure that that video stays public and remains the same video that you submitted. And that information is already being pulled into these pages that are currently in the design process. Let's see here. The two-pagers, as I said on the previous slide, will be due to Lever for Change by February 3rd. We will be giving you a link to a software where you will be uploading that information. All of that we will be sending out after this webinar. So we'll give you all of those instructions and make sure that you have everything that you need in terms of the due dates, what you need to submit, and where and how to submit it. And let's see, is there a strict page length? Yes, this is 2 pages. We want to make sure that it stays at 2 pages. Somebody else has asked whether or not we're going to be checking the information. When we receive the 2 pages from you, we will be reviewing them. We're not reviewing them for content and kind of giving you a lot of feedback on that. What we're going to be doing is making sure that they open, that the URLs or any hyperlinks that you've included in the PDF work, that there are no egregious mistakes or typos or anything like that. So we'll be doing kind of a basic quality assurance. We're not going to be copy editing your work. So you should make sure that that is all done internally and that you're providing us the best product that you can that we can then put forward in front of donors. So kind of keeping in mind the donors that Dana described to you, you want to be putting your best foot forward with those particular documents, and so making sure it's free of errors and that it represents the project and your organization and your team as well as possible.
Can I add one thing to
yeah.
that? I think, this is Dana again, I think one other thing, and it's probably in the piece that Karen and Lynn and Callie put together that you'll get, but create something that you would want to read that's visually appealing, that isn't 2-point font, edge to edge for 2 pages. And so, build in some breathing room and some visual appeal so that a donor, when they get the 2-pager in response to their request or go on the Bold Solutions Network directly and see it, is engaged and wants to learn more and read what you've presented.
And there's another question here around, should the 2-pager be a summary of the 100 and change application? Is there a possibility to add additional projects? So this is a little bit of a tension, right? I mean, we don't want it to mirror we want the 2-pager to mirror the project that you outlined. Obviously, though, this is going to be at a $5 to $10 million level, not a $100 million level. So it's not going to mirror exactly your proposal. It's going to be a pared down version of maybe, for phase 1, or what we really need to do to take this project into the next level, this $5 million would help us do X, Y, or Z, and that would help get us, move it forward, get us to the next level. If, for example, you stated in your proposal for $100 million that you were planning to expand this project into other regions, you can state that our goal is to expand into these other regions. We need X amount of resources to do that. So it doesn't need to 100% mirror the 100 and change proposal, because you do need to make that adaptation. However, it cannot be a completely different project than what was proposed. So I hope that's clear. I know that that's a little bit of a fine line to walk, but I think the idea is that you're staying true to what the project is that you put forward, but you're taking a step back and saying, if we only could get 5 or 10 million, what could we do to advance this work? Somebody asks here, should all applicants who are still in contention prepare this 2-pager, or will you let us know when our concept is approved for the Bold Solutions Network? So we are kind of doing these two things in tandem. As I stated at the outset, it is highly likely, and we anticipate that everybody who was given sent an email from us prior to the holiday break, inviting them to this webinar and letting them know that their proposal had moved on to the technical review process. So if you're in that category, you are likely to be moving into the Bold Solutions Network as well as the top 100 from MacArthur. However, as we also stated, it's not fully guaranteed until those technical reviews are completed and we've had a chance to review them. The question here is a little bit tricky, because you do not, as I stated, you do not need to provide us with a 2-pager. If you choose to not be in the Bold Solution Network, you don't need to do it. I guess the larger question for me is, even if you were one of the organizations who ultimately did not make it into the Bold Solution Network, having this 2-pager should ultimately be useful for you in your own fundraising efforts. So I would highly encourage you to be working towards making a 2-pager to use for your fundraising efforts, regardless of whether or not you may or may not make it into the top 100 or the Bold Solution Network. So I hope that answers the question. Let's see. Here's a question about, I don't know where that just went. So there's a question about approach to seeking funding for infrastructure costs. So this is probably a little bit outside the scope of what we're doing here, because we will not have the opportunity to really be pushing donors for infrastructure costs. What we are asking donors to look at is a highly vetted project proposal that you submitted through this process. We will not be going back to these donors and saying, hey, here's a great project, you should support their infrastructure costs. So I would say, and the fundraisers on the line, Callie or Karen may have some thoughts on how to approach seeking funding for infrastructure, but we would not want a 2-pager that is focused on infrastructure that is not in line with the goals of what we're trying to do here.
I have some thoughts. This is
Sure.
Callie Johnston. I raise money for medical research, and often people need mice or pipetters or things that are supplies in the lab, and naturally go to talking about those mice or those pipetters or their reagents that they need. I would focus not on the input, the infrastructure that you need, and describing that as much as I would focus on the impacts that it will enable. The really hard thing that I've experienced in my organization is that people, particularly scientists, have a hard time thinking about blue sky impact. You don't want to reach and say that you're going to cure cancer in 10 years. You have to be realistic and use proof of principle to show what is possible. But in terms of infrastructure, we've had a lot of success talking not about the infrastructure itself, but about the what it will enable in terms of the work and the impact. I don't know if that helps in terms of the specific infrastructure you're thinking about, but that's how we've been thinking about it a lot in our work.
Great, thank you, Callie. Here's another question about a clarifying question that I want to make sure that I've answered, which is somebody's asking here, do we need to register via the website to apply for the official Lever for Change competition in addition to the 2-pager, or will the 2-pager count as a registration? So I just want to clarify, Lever for Change is running multiple competitions. If you would like to apply to any of those competitions, you need to do that application separately. And you can go to the Lever for Change website. You can see what competitions are open. You can see what competitions are forthcoming. But each one of those competitions, you need to apply directly to that competition, just like you applied to 100 and Change. So there's a whole registration process, application process, different timeline, et cetera, for every competition. This two-pager does not register you for any other competition. This is a two-pager that is going to be attached to your 100 and Change proposal. It will be listed in our Bold Solutions network as a 100 and Change proposal with this two-pager attached, and then we will be using it to promote your work. But the registering for other competitions is a totally separate process in which you need to go to those individual competition websites and register and apply separately. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear. There's another question here that's also critical in terms of whether or not, if the application is a consortium, can individual members submit a two-pager, or must the submission come from the primary submitting organization? The only two-pagers we will be accepting is a two-pager from the lead organization. So whoever the lead organization was on your application, that is the only entity who can submit the two-pager. So you will need to work together in your consortium across your different organizations to come up with one cohesive two-pager that is attached to this particular project. We have a question around how important it is to have a 501c3 status, given the fact that most donors are individual and family foundations. We work with a variety of donors. Some only want to fund 501c3s. Some are looking to fund private organizations. Some are looking to fund consortia of organizations. So I would say that this is not something that you should focus too much on, because we are working with a variety of donors that have all different kinds of interests and are not only seeking 501c3 type organizations. Another question here is, should the fact sheet only highlight a $5 or $10 million solution and not the $100 million solution? For this particular fact sheet, I would say yes. What we're looking for is a smaller investment level so that we can put this in front of donors. That does not preclude you from also creating a $100 million fact sheet, should you want to do that and use that with your board and other fundraising activities. But for our purposes, we're looking for $5 and $10 million increments. So here's a question that says, how might we gain access to the existing Bold Solution Network database to see past examples? This is brand new. So we have not launched the Bold Solutions Network yet. Some of you may recall, if you were joining us for the previous, we're over time. This is going to be the last question, everyone. I'm sorry, I just realized we're over time. But we'll try and make sure that we answer any of these other questions that haven't been answered yet in the email that we send out to everyone. So this last question is, how might we gain access to the existing Bold Solutions Network? Like I said, this is a brand new thing. We have yet to actually launch it. It will be launched in February. Mid-February is currently what we're on track for, which is why we're asking for all of these to be sent to us by February 3rd so that they are ready and online and visible for the launch of the Bold Solution Network and the announcement of the top 100 for 100 and change. So all of that will be happening simultaneously. We are building off of what we did in the first round with the Foundation Center Solutions Bank. So if you want to see kind of an initial stab at what we're doing, you could go to the Foundation Center Solutions Bank, which is, I believe, still online and up and running, although I think it will be archived fairly soon. And that is an initial version. This is kind of an updated version. This is going to, rather than having everything that we received, this is only going to have the top 100 things that we received of the 100 and change competition. So it's a more vetted, highly curated database of projects. So I'm going to stop there. Like I said, I know folks have lots of questions. We'll try to make sure that we go through these and see if there's anything that is really critical that we haven't answered, and make sure to get that out to you in the email. Additional questions after that email can be sent to our info@leverforchange.com email box, and we will make sure to respond to those as soon as we can. So I want to thank everyone so much for joining us. Just a reminder to please fill out the survey at the end of this webinar and to give us any feedback that you have. I apologize for the connectivity issues that we had. As everybody knows, video conferencing and web platforms are not always the most reliable. Sometimes we run into issues with phone and comms all the time. So I apologize for that. But I hope that this was a useful webinar, and we look forward to following up with all of you. Please keep on the lookout for an email from us within the next several days that has all of the information that you need in order to submit your information to us. So congratulations again on making it this far in the competition. Happy New Year to everybody. We're really looking forward to kicking off this year and moving forward. Many thanks to everybody, and we'll talk to you soon.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes today's webinar. Thank you for your participation. You may now disconnect.